still watching Good
How
Morning
is the
Nigeria, and
response?
it's time.
Maison Fahrenheit has been doing
Now,
really
you may
well.
have
I've
a
been seeing him in a
guess,
couple of
but this
music
love story
videos.
will not work.
I saw him. I saw the.
We are looking at the hijab ban in Lagos, in the Lagos secondary schools and public schools. This has been going on for a long time, an ongoing battle, and the young female Muslim students that seem to stand their ground to want the courts to reverse this do not seem to want to step down from this. But should they? Well, we are joined by, should I call him one of our very own? Ayo, I don't know.
He's not a member of the family.
A member, yes. We have a big family here. So someone that's joining us to help us tackle this topic is Terfa Tilley-Gyado. He's an analyst, and he's going to help us break this down. And he says he's not going to be biased in this. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. So this is, it's not a new battle. It's not a new battle to try with, even before the ban, we would hear cases of schools banning, the use of hijabs in schools, not just by students, but by teachers as well. Let's just, in case people have not heard about this issue, I asked someone, I wanted to clarify yesterday, wait, if you're a public school, can you decide that you want you're okay? Is it at your discretion for your students to wear hijabs or not? So I was just trying to understand. So for anyone that might be new to this debate, can you, explain to us what are some of these Muslim female students fighting for exactly?
Okay. Well, I mean, the first thing I suppose to establish is that as you said, it's not a recent ban. It's not a recent policy. It first kicked off probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was done by the previous Lagos State government administration. And it's not specifically a hijab ban. The policy actually talks about a ban on variations on school uniforms, of which hijab is one of them. But obviously because that's the most widely worn one, and it has a religious slant. That's the one a lot of people have kicked against.
That's very interesting that you bring this up, because oftentimes when we're talking about this, people say, well, if we're going to if Muslims are able to wear hijab, what about traditionalists? What about if people want to now start bringing this? But as you've said, the group that we've seen, let's say, pick up the most, fuss or be against this the most, are hijab wearing people.
Yeah.
So then it kind of does seem, in a way, though it's not explicitly a Muslim issue, but it does seem as if this is a battle of wearing a hijab versus not wearing a hijab.
Yeah, I suppose it's because it's more a fundamental religious right, for Muslims. Yeah. But this ban extends. If you're a traditionalist, you're not allowed to wear white skull caps. You're not allowed to wear beads. So there's a wide range of variations of dressing. That's the key phrase, in that policy, and it applies only to public, primary and secondary schools.
Yeah.
Right, so I need to ask you a question, because you mentioned, and I'm very glad that you've clarified the fact that it's not a ban on hijab specifically. It's actually on trying to make uniforms in school. However, do you think the hijab should be considered a uniform as opposed to a religious symbol? Would you? Because then that would really, in terms of an argument for it, should the hijab be considered a uniform?
Well, I mean, let's go even a bit deeper. In Islam, the hijab itself is a prescription for a young lady to preserve her sanctity. And it's prescribed to be worn beyond puberty. So beyond puberty implies that, at primary school we shouldn't be having this discussion. So it's something which many other countries have adopted in various forms, France being perhaps one of the biggest examples. There's a huge uproar, of course. There's a huge Muslim population in France. But it's really the idea behind the policy was to ensure that, as you said, there's uniformity across board, but also reduce bullying, reduce segregation. According to religious, social, and sociocultural, differences. It's to ensure that people are all getting on, irrespective of what their background is. So that's sort of what's behind the policy.
Okay, before we get into what is actually being fought for on the other
Yeah.
side, I just want to invite our audience to be a part of the conversation as well. We want to hear from you. Do you think that the ban of the hijab in Lagos public and secondary schools should be, do we redo it and go back to being able to wear the hijab? So join us by calling 01277 8196, 012 777 2196, and 012 196. Get onto facebook.com/GMNS Cool TV. You'll find the topic up so you can leave your comments and we'll take a look after the news. And also get onto Twitter @GMNS Cool TV. So I want to, uniform, it is important. We can look at it around the world. There are research papers, sometimes they say, when children get to an older age, like when you're reaching the stage of before going into university, some schools won't like to, around the world, you'll see, have a policy where you can wear whatever you want to wear because of the arguments for the use of uniform. But my question is wearing a hijab when you can perhaps still wear the school uniform, is that necessarily inflicting the uniform? Is it impossible? Do you see a scenario where you can wear the hijab and still wear your school uniform as well?
I think, the trouble then is where to sort of start distinguishing, because, okay, you have the hijab, which essentially is just protecting your head.
To your neck.
Your head to your neck. But then a lot of students, the state government found before making this policy, were also wearing the burqas, which cover from head to toe. They're wearing the niqabs, which sort of have a little slit in the eyes. So at what point do you sort of then distinguish that, okay, this is acceptable, that's not acceptable? Because they're also expressing their own, sort of religious, right. So I think they had to draw the line somewhere, and they had to, say, okay, this is going to be across board, and any variation to the school uniform, whether it's as a veil or a headwear, it's not going to be accepted.
All right, Terfa, great points you mentioned, and I need to bring you back to the point where you spoke about the fact that people, this is protecting the young people. Now, great one. I'm glad that we are trying to protect them. But do you think that the message or the emphasis should be more on tolerance as opposed to having them protected? As a human being, why can't I have the freedom to express myself as an individual, as long as I'm not breaking the law, and having people understand, because Nigerians are largely intolerant in terms of religious intolerance, cultural intolerance, ethnic intolerance. Should we not be preaching the message of tolerance and understanding people's religion and culture, as opposed to having me have to modify my lifestyle to ensure that the other person is not offended?
I agree with you, but the truth is, the school is probably one of the toughest environments in the world. It's it's an unforgiving environment, and you get picked on for being different. You get picked on for being fat, for being tall, for being short, across board. And yes, in an ideal world, you want to encourage children to accept, everyone, etc. But the research, the government did before going ahead with this policy was that cliques were being formed around these religious, around these social lines where, the Muslim kids were, hanging out together, the Christians on another side, the popular kid, which of course happens everywhere in the world, But it becomes a danger when this is now being done at that age across religious lines, So this is to, try and just filter, some of those, distinct things that separate them at that age to ensure that let kids be kids, let them play with each other, let them, try and get on without having those sort of distinguishing features or dressing.
Well, the conversation is only beginning. It is far from being over, but we'll take a quick time out. Mr. Victor is standing by at the News Express Centre. When we get back, we'll still be on the issue of the hijab ban, yay or nay. to Good Morning Nigeria. Now, it is time for part 2 of our top story. We are asking if the hijab should, in fact, be banned in Lagos public schools and secondary schools. Of course, this is what is in place, but many people have been against this, mostly young female Muslims that have urged the courts to reverse their decision. And we are joined by Terfa Tilley-Gyado, who is an analyst, and he's been helping us break down and digest the topic further. But we do hope you will be a part of the conversation as well. Now, we've gone into so many things. We are yet to delve into really what the Muslim students argue, why they feel that they should be enabled to wear the hijab. But before we get to that, I want to touch on the fact that some of the comments that the court made when it continued to say no, no, no to reversing the ban. And it spoke about, the Constitution upholding the fact that Nigeria is a secular state. Now, we the ladies behind the scene, we were discussing this topic, and I personally find it very strange to think of Nigeria as a secular state with the importance of religion that seems enshrined into everything that happens. We can't even have a president that may be, if we've had a Christian president already and another Christian comes out, it's a problem. Yet we are a secular state. Do you see this as a valid reason to, the fact that we are a secular state is why hijab shouldn't be allowed in public schools?
I think in as much as the reality is that religion plays a very important role in our lives, in the decisions we make, the leaders we choose, the people we ask to represent us. Constitutionally, it really shouldn't. And I think it's in that spirit that the judge decided to uphold, the ban. So it shouldn't matter really, in an ideal world. But Nigeria is far from an ideal world.
We discussed this in terms of religion. Do you think we'd get to a point with this kind, as little as it may seem in terms of it's just an item of clothing, but we know how important these symbols are when it comes to religion and religious expressions. Do you think that we should start to either totally, like Eno mentioned, it's either we totally agree that we're not going to touch on religion at all? Just recently when there was news that the president was going to move the chapel in Aso Rock, we know what happened. A lot of people went up in arms. So how then can we separate where religion should come into place and when it shouldn't come into place? For instance, in education, they're saying, no, we don't in uniforms. When it has to do with other things, they're okay.
Well, it's a difficult one because as I said, the fact is that religion plays, in my opinion anyway, perhaps too important a role in terms of nation building, in terms of driving policy, in terms of getting things done. And I'm not sure it has always helped us, in terms of being considered a Nigerian.
Sorry, let me just ask you to pause because we have a caller from Nasiri from Bauchi. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. So we're talking about the hijab ban in Lagos State. Can I ask what your opinion is on this topic?
Okay. First and foremost, I will answer your question. Should the hijab be banned in public school? I would say no.
Okay.
Because I think that should be, and that should not be an issue of discussion, as it is a choice between modesty and not. Now, let me ask you a question. Sir, if you have a phone that you bought on the same day, and one you got a jacket and a screen guard for, and the other you did not do anything to, please, which one do you think will be admired in the next 6 months? That is my simple understanding of hijab and not wearing hijab. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Nasiru. Okay, I hope did you get the question?
I think I got his analogy. He's saying essentially that by not wearing a hijab, the ladies in question are perhaps damaged in some way. Was that
they're exposed?
Well, they're exposed.
Quicker than if you had a hijab on.
I understand that. A lot of women, and I wish we had a representative here from Muslim students, but a lot of the ladies who wear the hijabs or the other Islamic protective garments say that it gives them a sense of comfort, it gives them a sense of identity, and that's fine, that's great, but then we also need to establish the fact that there are also, on the flip side, a lot of atrocities committed against these women. Anyone who is sexually perverse, who is violent, will still perpetrate those acts, irrespective of, those things. So I don't take away from the fact that it's a religious expression, but there are no rights, even religious rights that are absolute. They have to, sometimes be deferred to in certain cases, yes, or one of which is the public interest. And I think the government, in making this ban, viewed this as the public interest.
All right, Tiff, I need to also ask you another question. So Nigeria has the largest number of out-of-school children in the world. 10.5 million children are out of school. Many of these children are from the north, yes, and we know the bias the north has against education. Remember, this ban doesn't apply to Lagos State alone. It's a law that cuts across different parts of the country. Now, in Lagos, it might be all well and good because we have more children going to school. Would this not be a deterrent to the northern children who already do not want to send their girls to school? And now you're saying that they will choose hijab over going to school. How are we going to solve this problem?
Yeah, well, I think at the risk of sounding non-secular, I think we need to adapt the laws to fit where we live. Lagos State, primarily, which is what we are talking about today, is a cosmopolitan state. And we have in Lagos people from all parts of the country, all parts of the world. It's neither a Muslim state nor is it a Christian state. So I'm a greater advocate of the fact that people should be more uniform, more diverse in what they wear and in their customs than in places that are staunchly Islamic.
Isn't there a slight contradiction in what you're saying, in the sense that on the one side it's, yes, cosmopolitan, it's different, but then on the other side we're saying, so let's make our schools and the students all look the same. If Lagos is a state, if we're using this as a case study, where we have people from all walks of life, surely our schools, in the same way that we want our politicians to reflect this as well when we have arguments of, oh, it's only northern leaders that are in government. Why can't we, in a state like Lagos, where there are people from different faiths, different walks of life, be able to see that within the classroom, so long as it doesn't disrupt learning? Is it not possible?
It doesn't disrupt learning in any way. And the hijabs, again, just to go back to the actual policy, it's not a blanket ban. It's not extensive. They're still allowed to wear them in some cases. Okay. You can wear them during Islamic religious classes. You can wear them during prayer. So it's not as if you shouldn't wear them at all. But I think there's a difference between that and also having certain school policies which supersede everything else, which is what this is.
The other argument seems to be, which is, it seems very easy to just bring it in, is that, well, if you want to wear hijab, then you go and find your private hijab-wearing school where you can wear it. I often ask, do we have this large number of Islamic schools all over, Lagos, all over the country, where people can just freely, as easily as it sounds, just go to another school? Well,
there are loads of options. I think there are something about 10,000 registered educational institutions in Lagos alone.
But if you do that, Eno, the only problem is that when do we then foster integration? Because the idea of bringing people together to learn in one classroom, Muslim, Christian, is that you may get the opportunity to interact with people from other faiths, understand them, and then be able to live together as one. Of course,
but you can have that without wearing a hijab or a rosary.
But you're also, these children grow up to be the future, the adults that will then, get into positions of power, into teaching. And are we not teaching our young people that being different is not okay? You have to be the same. But when you get older, you must somehow arrive at the bus stop where it's equality for everyone is the same. You weren't taught this as a child, but you'll know it as an adult.
I think that argument holds if wearing a hijab or any other religious garment defines the entirety of your religion.
Well, let's look. The students argue that the ban on wearing a hijab violates their rights of freedom of thought, conscience, religion, dignity of human persons, and freedom from discrimination guaranteed by the Nigerian constitution. That's a whole lot of issues in just what seems as a simple, garment. But it obviously, maybe I don't wear a hijab, so I won't be able to relate with completely how important it is to people. But at least we can, we can relate with how important religion is.
Yes.
This is a big deal. It can't just be swept aside as just wear the uniform, forget about it. Some people see themselves as Muslim before a human being, as in that's what's held as the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But I think, as I said, there's so many facets to any religion. A person's religion is a very three-dimensional thing. It's beyond just the way you look or how you, So I don't think taking, the ability to wear hijab sometimes, not every time, somehow changes how your right to express yourself in that religion.
Easy for you to say. Let's ask the Muslim students. I hope they'll tweet us and tell us what they think, because you've said that. Well, it's not that important. But for some people, it is that important. It would even then become a matter of choosing education or wearing your hijab. And for many people, they might tilt to the right, and that's what a number of people are trying to avoid in the issue. Okay.
Well, as Ayo said, you definitely need to get onto our social media platforms, because this is a conversation that could go on and on and on. And it's very important that it happens. So far as we have people in the state and around the country that are not happy, with laws that have been introduced, we'll keep seeing their appeals. Thank you very much. I do hope we'll see you again.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Terfa.
Okay, we're going to take a quick time out. We still have another top story for you. That's, we like to treat you early in the week. So stick around, there's lots more to come.
So, did you like what you just saw? I know you did. It's very simple. If you want to see more, just subscribe to our channel right now.